What is the most embarrassing thing that you have ever done, ever?
Ever.
The guy specifically was like, not on stage, not in this or that, ever. That was his question.
It's a good question. I have to think about it because it's tough for me to get embarrassed.
Yeah. So is that, because I was thinking this could either be this, I feel like the most...
Okay, I know.
Go on.
It was when I was going to camp as a kid. I went to a camp that shared a cafeteria with another camp, and I saw a girl that I really liked, and I got up the courage to ask her out. She didn't really give me much of an answer, and then after that, every time I came up near her, I could tell that this was all just fake because they were a drama camp. Her and this dude were like pretending to be in love. She couldn't just reject me. They were obviously not together or anything.
Yeah.
But so obviously she had told him that, and then got him in on it.
Yeah.
And they just kind of like pretended to be like in a relationship while I was around, which was kind of humiliating.
Oh no.
Because it wasn't real. So yeah, just kid stuff. I don't really know. I don't really get embarrassed very easily. That was kind of just humiliating.
Yeah, I can trade you a similar story where there was I remember I was in school, I was in my last year of school, so I would have been 18. 18. And there was a girl in the year who was in the year below me. We were both in like sixth form, which is like a college. I know college is different. I can't remember how the words translate, but either way, like loads of people in our year like fancied her, and I remember I talked to her briefly, and we kind of were talking, and then but no one really. I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want to like. I don't know. I felt like people make a big deal of it. And I remember one time she was like, yeah, just come and meet me in like the common room or whatever. I was a bit like, oh, okay, there's going to be people there. And I remember I'd not told any of my friends that we were talking. And I remember walking into that common room, and it was like a study sort of season. So it was like dead silent. She was in there and all of my friends were there. And I just ghosted all of them and walked straight up to her and just started talking to her. And all of my friends were like, what the fuck is going on? And I just remember it was the most, I even feel embarrassed talking about it now. It hurts so embarrassing.
It hurts to hear. Oh, I've got one that's worse. When I was, my first car was an old Volvo. One of those old tank looking Volvos. And it had a car phone in it. It wasn't my car phone. It came with one of those old school car phones that was just built into it. And I actually used the car phone. And I remember I was driving with my then girlfriend somewhere, and I left a message on my parents' answering machine for some reason. That was that. And when I got home, my dad said, you should listen to the message you left.
Oh, no.
I was like, why? He's like, you should just listen to it. I was like, why? What's on it? He's like, I'm not going to tell you what's on it. You should just listen to it. I was like, nope. And I went up and I hit delete. I don't want to know what the fuck was on that. But from what I understand, the recording just kept going. I didn't actually hang up. So who the fuck knows what we talked about? But it was, I wanted to disappear. I wanted to disappear. I can only guess what my parents heard. So I'm glad I didn't play it back, because that would have traumatized me. I
remember there was one quite some time ago when I first started teaching guitar. There was one guy who I sort of traveled quite a long way. When I first started, I would travel to students, but then very quickly I ran out of time to do that, so people came to me. And I went to there's one guy who I said to him, I can't really be traveling anymore. And I was very polite about it, but I was just like, I don't really have time to be traveling to the lessons, and he wasn't really going to come to my place, so we basically were sort of cutting ties on the lessons. And he called me one time, and I didn't pick up for whatever reason, and he obviously forgot to hang up the phone, and I could hear him in his sort of strong Birmingham UK accent going, "Oh, fucking don't answer the phone then, blah blah blah." It was just like
Nice.
going off on me. I was like, brilliant, cheers pal.
Well, hey, at least you got some useful information out of that.
Useful information such what? I should go
such
fuck
as
myself,
how that person feels.
Yeah, I mean, it was very useful when you know you're never going to see them again anyway. That really, really helps. But yeah, it was.
True.
Yeah, that was a interesting scenario. But look, speaking of kind of communication and stuff, neat segue here. There's a couple of things I wanted to ask you about regarding like kind of how one particular question I think ties in with a lot of the stuff you do and how you're talking to people on podcasts and stuff like that, but actually how the communication has changed nowadays. I'm wondering, because music is such a communicative thing, how music might change or might be changing almost in parallel, sort of in tandem with the way that how we communicate is changing nowadays. You know, how there seems to be a lack of not personality but personalness, closeness in the way, you know, like obviously thing is I couldn't be in a room with you anyway because you're so far away, but you know, with people that I live near, a lot of the time I spend my time communicating on the phone or on a video call or whatever, and sometimes it feels like you're losing that connection. And I wonder if that the way, because we're changing how we communicate, if how music is going to change, if music is going to change or has changed because of that. It's a bit of a wordy question. I don't really know where the question is in that. I'm just hoping you've picked up on the sort of the vague point I'm trying to make of.
Oh, do you mean music itself, or do you mean the music business?
Music itself, yeah. Actual created music, not so much the business, but because we communicate differently now, and whether that's going to translate to people feeling different things and then thus creating different music. It's a bit of a meta question.
Well, kind of hard to escape that, because whatever art is coming out reflects the time period it's in, right? So if communication between people is getting shorter, in some ways more frequent. It's shorter, more frequent, more bite size, and you have a big push in business for music to go that way. Because of the explosion of TikTok and the real format, then yes, people who grow up watching that, that'll form how they view music. The same way that drummers who grew up hearing edited drums, but didn't know that they were edited, just thought that that's how you play drums, just got better than the previous generation. That's how you end up with drummers like an Alex Rudinger or something, who plays stuff that in the previous generation seemed completely actually impossible. And that's just because technology evolved and kids don't know the difference. So you heard insanely fast and human drums, figured that's what a drummer does, and then just somehow figured that out. So kids that grow up under, I guess, the umbrella of reels and bite-sized formats, well, that's what they're experiencing as music. Not everybody is into music history or into older music. People who aren't into that and only know short, modern stuff as what music is, well, that's what's going to color how they create. So I think it's inevitable, but I don't think that the actual spirit behind it is changing or ever does change.
Yeah, I guess how we communicate doesn't necessarily change what we're communicating, or maybe it does. I don't know.
No, we're still human. I mean, so the what is circumstantial to some degree, to some level. Some of the particulars are going to be circumstantial, but the deeper stuff is just a constant, and it's universal. That's why we can listen to old music and still feel it. That's why music is considered timeless. So I don't know. Yeah, I think the format changes, the medium changes, but I'm not so sure that like the heart and soul of it really changes much.
Well, I mean, it's like how a lot of the Stoic sort of beliefs seem more, if you to quote like, I don't know, like Marcus Aurelius, all these kind of, it all seems more relevant now than maybe even it was. I don't know how relevant it was back then, but that, I suppose the human condition maybe doesn't change so much. So
I bet it was just as relevant. Otherwise, we would never have heard about it. It was relevant enough for the next generation to have passed it on, and so on and so on and so on. If it wasn't relevant, nobody would have passed it on.
Yeah.
So I think those lessons are just as relevant.
Yeah. Do you feel like your how you communicate ideas, do you feel like that has changed through just the sheer number of people you communicate with, and just through I guess this can tie in with any sort of realm of your sort of professional life. Although I'm kind of sort of angling it towards more the podcasting in this question, I guess. But do you feel like your communication has changed through spending a lot of time with kind of like-minded people in these more sort of long-form conversations?
It's hard for me to answer that because I don't really listen to myself. But I do know that my podcasts have gotten shorter. That could be because I have less time available to me for podcasting. It could also be that I have more guests available to me. So either way, I'm trying to get as much in 1 hour or 90 minutes that I used to get in 4 hours. So I find that I'm getting right to the point more often and going on less tangents. So my communication style has probably gotten more direct, more to the point.
It's funny that sort of seems contrary to me to what you would expect, maybe, if you were to get used to sitting down and talking to people for an extended period of time. You would think almost you would have more ideas, like not that you're not having more ideas, but you would maybe drag those further. But actually I suppose the inverse being true is quite an interesting kind of way. I always keep these to about an hour or so. And I find, I think I naturally, what's funny is I think I naturally have that expectation in my head of that's where the conversation is. I think without even thinking about it, I draw these conversations to a close, sometimes without even consciously doing it. And I wonder whether if I said to whoever, let's just chat for like 4 hours, I do wonder how that would go, because I've never done, I think the longest I've chatted for was with Adam from Lorna Shore, and that was nearly 2 hours.
Well, the thing with the super long podcasts is not everybody is down or capable. So as my guests started to get higher profile, they also were more strict with how much time they'd give me. So I don't really think that the podcasts are less deep or go less of a distance. There's just less meandering. And I would still be willing with the right guest to go for 3 or 4 hours, but not as a rule anymore. And I actually think that more purposeful directed communication, it works better for me.
Yeah.
I find it more interesting.
I mean,
I like music that's that way too.
Yeah, that was something I was going to say, actually, is it feels very much like a producer's. It's funny, I was chatting to Joey Sturgis, so I'm sure there's a close tie there, but he was talking about that producer mind of his goes in, is like chop, chop, chop on all the bits that don't, and I've been in the studio myself where a producer goes, right, don't need that, let's cut that in half, let's put this over here. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that is a crossover in your minds? It's sort of the way you approach things in life in general, this kind of getting to the point, and I don't mean in a sort of a like speeding through things unnecessarily kind of way. I mean that desire, I suppose, to cut out the white noise and just get to the important stuff.
Well, you could spend your entire life say you live like a natural, healthy life, working towards the things that you want to do, and no matter what, you still are going to leave a bunch of things undone. Like, there's no way around it. There's just not enough time in life for everything. And so, the more I go, the less I like to waste time on bullshit, basically. And yeah, so it's a little bit of the producer mind and a little bit of, I kind of am developing less patience, I guess, for just bullshit, meaningless bullshit.
Yeah, I've noticed something, and it's funny you say that because it's literally only last night that what I've started doing is like journaling, and I've started to try and I set myself tick lists of things I want to do every day that are important to me for my health, my fitness, my career, everything,
Mm-hmm.
some more significant than others. And the thing I became really distinctly aware of last night was like, was it Thursday night last night? And my sort of working week finishes on a Thursday night. And I was like, oh shit, it's Thursday again. Like, as in, I feel like the last week just disappeared. And it's weirdly only when it's only since I've started more closely monitoring, like, what am I doing every day, that the time flies away. And it's ironic, I think, because like in times when I've been less productive, I'm way less aware of that, which you would think, again, conversely, you would think when you're not productive, when you're not getting important things done, that's when you would think that you'd be more aware of time passing you by. But I found actually I'm far more aware of it now, and I feel almost a little Groundhog Day at the moment, like, in that I'm like, where has that week gone? Like, I don't know I know I've done stuff. I don't feel like unhappy with my last week, but I think through being more productive, I've actually become much more acutely aware of time passing. I guess it's just, I couldn't maybe, to hazard my best guess, it would be to say that I'm now valuing my time more, I guess.
Good.
In a simple way.
You should. I mean, it's the one thing, that's the one constant for everybody, regardless of how well they do in life or not. That's the one thing we all have in common. We all have the same amount of time each day. And yeah, I think the more productive you are, it's an interesting thing, because you need to be able to tune the clock out while you're doing the work, but also be aware of the clock at the same time because of other things that you have to do and how to manage your time. So it's a strange balancing act.
Where do you feel you find that you sort of draw the line between, I don't want to say work and play, but like,
what's play?
Well, that's the thing. If there's not a line, then if you see work as play, then I guess that's a good thing. I don't know, maybe it's not, but I was going to say, in terms of how you sort of divvy up your day or your week, I sometimes stress myself out when I take time off, even if I've not been, like, probably more so if I've not been that productive in the day. How do you balance that kind of time between, like, the pursuits, the kind of I don't want to say career based, that makes it sound a bit sterile and a bit, how do you kind of balance that time and between the things that are more, I guess, success based, quote unquote, and maybe things like family or friends or holidays or whatever, those kind of things?
I don't really. I don't really work on the whole work-life balance thing. I think when we're talking about signal to noise ratio and worrying about needless bullshit, to me, worrying about that is needless bullshit. I think that we prioritize the things that we care about. And so if you care about your friends and family, you'll make time for them. And it's not going to be this like massive effort to try and fit them in. And if you have good relationships with them, they also will be understanding of what it is you're trying to do with your life. So I don't really think about it very much. I feel like for me personally, it's a waste of time to start thinking about work-life balance and things like that. I just make a point of, seeing my girlfriend X amount of times per week, and that's basically it. It's I don't really put too much thought into it. It's one of those things where I feel like you come to a point when you work hard enough to where you can no longer work, at least productively. There's a point where I check out mentally. I could probably keep going. I could definitely keep going, but the quality of the work would be bad. And so I've trained myself to know when that point is. And it's generally the same every day. So there's a time of day where just the output starts to decline. And I literally could sit there for 5 or 6 more hours, but it's not necessarily a good thing. So when I start to reach that zone, that's when I can go do other things. So that's kind of how I look at it. It's not really about like any sort of balance. It's more about what do I want to do with my brain power, and what's the best use of it. And I've just kind of figured out that the first block of the day is going to be my best time. So what do I want to do with that? And I could go hang out with family, or I could practice guitar, I could exercise, I could podcast, I could write music, I could work on URM stuff. There's any list of things that I could do. But I always am asking myself, what's going to be the best use of that time? And then kind of so on from there. And what's the best use of like the next block of time during the day, which is kind of like noon to like 3. And then from like 3 to 6 or 7, I kind of see it like another block of time. And kind of my brain power diminishes. My ability to do like great things diminishes as it goes. And so I just try to be very strategic about how I spend that. And then if there's something important to do with friends and family, I'll let it happen during that first block of time, but I'm very, very protective of that. So that's kind of a long answer to give you that. I don't really worry about it too much. I just know how I work. And so I plan time for like you said, success-oriented things in the time where I probably wouldn't be doing good work anyways. And then it's not an issue of trying to find balance or anything like that. Because I feel like when people say work-life balance, they're kind of like, is your work not your life? What's the difference? Like, if there is a difference, why is there a difference in how you approach it, or how you think about it? I don't really see a difference between my life and my work. It's all one big thing. I'm trying to do my best in all of it.
I've seen the phenomenon of the sort of second brain come up with this idea of like, if you read, there's only so much information. I don't know if you're familiar with this kind of thing, that it's something the sort of productivity gurus, I think, are sort of semi-obsessing over nowadays, where the idea of having like almost like a spreadsheet of all the information you want to store that maybe you won't remember from, say, books you read or like podcasts you listen to or something. And I couldn't help, I remember seeing this on a particular YouTube video, and it was this girl who was going through how she organized all of the information she took in on a daily basis into different like folders and the things, and how and I'm certain it works for her. Like, well done. It doesn't, but I kind of
works
thought
for a video.
It definitely worked. It was a very aesthetic. It was a great video. It really was. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It actually was a really good video. But I couldn't help but think like, so like I've taken up reading more recently, and I just find the good stuff stays in. Like if I forget it, I kind of think how it sounds almost a bit lazy to just say, well, if I forget it, how important is it? But I mean, I'm trying to tie this back to what you were saying, in that like when you think about how you spend your time, it's like maybe a few more of us could do with just like chilling the fuck out and just doing what works.
Just do the fucking work.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds to me like that organization system is way overkill My brain works fine. Why do I need to sit there and make a spreadsheet for everything that I already went through during the day? Like, spreadsheet is a great tool. So when Daath went into the studio to record the first batch of songs that we recorded, there's a lot of guitars. And so I made myself a spreadsheet so that I could make sure to not forget to track anything. Because sometimes there's like up to 20 layers of guitars. I needed to keep track somehow. So that was a great way to keep track and not a waste of time. But I feel like, and I've noticed this from talking to lots of people, lots of subscribers, URM and Riffhard, that people tend to formalize things that don't need to be formalized. And it's a veiled form of procrastination. It's productivity theater. They're making themselves feel like they're doing work by making these spreadsheets and using these productivity hacks, but really all they're doing is working on the spreadsheet, not working on the thing that they actually want to work on. And I think that productivity hacks are great. Planners are great. All that shit's great when you actually have something to organize, something to plan. But if you're just doing that to do that because you saw it on some YouTube video, keep in mind, the person who made the YouTube video is trying to get views because they're trying to make money off of YouTube. So I'm not saying that that system doesn't work or that they don't use in real life, but what's the reason that they made a video in it? And it's because that's their job. So that doesn't mean that they actually use it in real life or use it religiously. Not even saying that they're being dishonest, just saying that what you see from a productivity guru, just keep in mind, that's their job. So they're going to be putting that stuff out, and it's up to you to decide how good or how relevant that stuff is.
I saw you post recently about it's quite a specific example. You're talking about sort of perfectionism and how you're looking for a sitar for the current, is it the current set of tracks that you've recorded? Is that right? And that there was some scenario where you knew you'd only have it for a certain amount of time and you might not get the perfect take. Am I going with the right? Have I got the right end of the stick with this?
The sitar. So when I was at Jens Bogren's place, mixing the first batch of songs, I was already thinking about the next batch of songs, and they had a sitar there. I've always wanted to somehow use one. So I just decided that I was going to take it and do something with it, for better or for worse. And I had this voice in my head that was saying, well, don't worry about it, because what if it's not great and then the sitar is in Sweden and you don't live in Sweden, then what? Like, and you're stuck with this like subpar thing. What do you do then? Like, do you fly back to Sweden? Like all this stupid bullshit where, in reality, if I did something awesome with that sitar, during that session, well, A, maybe it would have been good enough to keep, so I wouldn't need to worry about it again. But B, if it wasn't good enough to keep, but good enough to do something with, then if it really was that good, I'm resourceful. I could figure it out. So, and I know lots of people, I personally know lots of people who, because of any given reason that they can come up with, would talk themselves out of having done it because of what might go wrong, or what might not come to fruition as a result, and just stop themselves from doing these things. Now, the sitar thing is tiny. Like that doesn't, I mean, that's whatever. But I kind of take that approach with life anyways, which is just do it. Just do the thing. And then if it doesn't work out, or if it doesn't work out well enough, you can adjust. But talking yourself out of doing things most of the time is bad. Most of the time.
Yeah, I think the Yeah, that's kind of exactly the reason I was asking, is about that idea of just like, I think nowadays perfection has become a form of procrastination. Maybe it always was, but it seems more noticeable perhaps. And I know in my own life there's so many times when I've been nervous about maybe putting out a video of me playing guitar or something, or I'll be nervous, or like I'll be worried about even trying to pick up the guitar and write something, because I'm like, oh, but is it going to be as good as the last song I did? I'm not even thinking about other people's songs, I'm thinking about my own songs, you know. So I think that's definitely something that's there. I mean, again, another thing I saw that you shared that I found interesting was this idea of some modern producers searching for this kind of silver bullet, you know, this sort of, and I think it's in a lot of guitar players as well, musicians. I'm sure it's in all forms of art as well. Do you think maybe because of some of the stuff, some of the tools we have nowadays, and the things that just expedite processes sort of almost exponentially, do you think that in the way that some things have become so much easier, do you think there's almost this expectation maybe that difficult things aren't as difficult as they once looked, and now people are expecting to solve their problems, whether it be with a guitar tone or with something maybe deeper in life, you know, with sort of these quick fixes?
I don't really think that there's quick fixes. I just think that people, as they evolve, solve certain problems, which then reveal new problems or set the bar higher, and then that forces you to have to develop other skills. So by solving one thing, that gives you the energy and the time to focus on other things. And those things, you may not have worried about those things because you didn't even realize it was possible to worry about those things, or it was so far off. You're so worried about this initial thing that you couldn't get to those other things. So solving these problems, it doesn't make things easier. It just changes the scope of what it is that you're dealing with. I don't really see a problem with studio technology. I think it's great. Making great music is just as hard as it's ever been. And anyone who thinks that it's easy, for instance, to produce like modern sounding stuff with like the aid of all these modern recording aids, modern recording tools, should give it a shot sometime, and see just how easy it is to have something sound super polished. It's fucking hard. I don't think it's... there's this weird misconception that you can just get a preset and sound good, and I've never really seen that happen.
Yeah,
if it were true, I would have experienced it by now, because I hear student submitted mixes, and I see student guitar players all of the time through Riffhard and URM. And if it were possible to do that, I think by now I would have seen it multiple times over, but I haven't, because it's not possible. And this was when we first started Nail the Mix. People were definitely, there were a lot of haters who thought that we were giving away all the secrets to production, and that they were going to lose their jobs because everyone was just going to copy everything, etc. If by now, Nail the Mix contest submissions should have been better than the originals. Not just better, but sounded just like them. But it hasn't happened for some reason, and thousands and thousands and thousands of submitted mixes where people have been watching exactly what the mixers and producers do. Like, exactly. They could literally watch one of our videos and mimic every single move one by one by one, and it still, for whatever reason, won't sound the same. And so I really feel like if it were possible, I would have seen it by now, but it's not.
Have you seen any mixes where, not where you've necessarily thought, well, that's better, but where you've listened and thought like, that's in its own, it's got its own thing that could just as easily have been released? Yeah,
we have some students that are amazing. what's especially cool is when they've been around, subscribed for a long time, and you've seen the progression where they went from sucking to being really, really awesome. And you see those people oftentimes will get jobs with bigger producers and then start getting label work. Yeah, for sure. I've never really seen a submitted mix beat the original, but I've definitely heard submitted mixes have their own thing where they're good mixes. And whether you like them better or not, that's your opinion. But yeah, for sure.
That's really cool. Yeah, I'd love to see behind the bonnet and just be able to see the different things that come in. But obviously, to get to this,
no, you don't.
Okay,
no, you don't.
Okay, I won't press you on the other end of the sort of mixing spectrum. But with all of this stuff, obviously, I think again, there's sometimes that misconception of how much hard work has to go into it. Like you were saying about with modern kind of production, just how much you have to think about it and put the time in. Again, I'm not trying to just sort of sound like I'm quoting you your own things back from your Instagram, but I just found there was quite a lot on there reading through that I found interesting. You're talking about work ethic and sort of talent and how those things balance out. And how do you think, what would maybe be your advice or your best advice for someone who wants to sort of train that work ethic and really build something, but feels like they're going from a bit of a standing start? Because I know I've been in a place where it feels like sort of good work creates more good work, but sometimes when you're don't feel like you're doing anything, it can be really hard to start that process that can then create that domino effect of positive kind of.
What do you mean by don't feel like you're doing anything?
So, sometimes if you're, I'm trying to think the best way to kind of put it, where if you're not feeling productive or you don't feel like you're hardworking, even though that's what you're aspiring to, how do you think you should start that process of becoming beyond the obvious of just working hard? What do you think is the step?
You just answered your own question. It's I think people want there to be some other answer because it's too simple. It's too simple, and that being the answer forces people to ask themselves tough questions. But it really is just that. How do you be more productive? Be more productive. How do you feel like you're doing enough work? Well, do enough work. It really is that simple. Like, I get asked all the time, like, how do you deal with writer's block? Well, it's really, really simple, because writer's block means that you're not writing. So write. If you're writing, then does that mean you're going to like every idea? No. But lots of times people are confusing writer's block with not liking their own ideas. And then again, the answer to that is just keep writing, because if you write enough, you're going to eventually like one of your ideas. If you don't like your ideas, you're not going to get to good ideas by not writing. You're only going to get to better ideas by writing more. If you write again, you don't like it, then write again. If you don't like it, then write again. Eventually, you're either going to realize that you don't have what it takes, or you're going to come up with something good. And then if you do it enough, you're going to realize for every number of times that I sit down to write, I'll come up in general with this much garbage, this much stuff that's okay, and this much stuff that's great. So I just need to keep doing it, and I need to try it this many times in general to kind of start getting towards something good. I can tell you, if I haven't written in a while, it takes me about 3 weeks before I write anything that's not total garbage. And those 3 weeks suck, because it sucks to not like what you're coming up with. Know that you have something better and not know when it's going to happen. But I've noticed lots of people stop themselves long before they get to that light bulb turning on moment. And really the only way to get to that is to just sit down and do the thing. And I don't know why. I've thought about this. I don't know why people get so irate when I tell them that, because they do. They take it personally. It's like, no, you don't understand. My situation is different. It's different for me. I really feel like I'm not good enough, or like this is in my way, or that's in my way, or my writer's block is different. But it's not different. It really, no one solved their block by not doing things. Now, the one exception to that is if you're exhausted and you need to recharge. So obviously there's a difference between not doing the work versus not having the capacity to do more work. And when you reach that limit, that's when it's important to stop and take however long you need to take to recover, because your creativity is a finite resource, but it's a rechargeable finite resource. So you need to take the amount of time necessary to recharge it. But that's different than having writer's block and then just not writing as a way to get around it. I guess moral of the story is I don't really believe in finding inspiration. I believe in creating inspiration. So then the only way that you really do that is by sitting down and getting to work. It's a freebie if inspiration hits before you get to work, and then that can carry you into it. And it's a freebie if you sit down to work and you're just, the light bulb is on and everything's just flowing. That's great. That's cool. But that should be looked at as like a bonus, in my opinion. If you look at that as a bonus, you'll have a much easier time. I think lots of people think that it should be like that every time. And so when it's not like that, they get discouraged and they feel like they're standing still. When in reality, the norm is going to be feeling like you're standing still and having to manually start the engine. That inspiration thing is cool and it exists, but you can't predict it. You can create the conditions upon which it'll show up, but in my opinion, you shouldn't let that dictate your decisions. And again, one exception to that is if, like, for instance, I'm practicing technical stuff on guitar, and I get inspired to write something, and ideas start going, I'll divert and go with the inspiration.
Yeah, I definitely know that. Sometimes you can almost feel like bad when you're practicing and you come up with something like, oh, practice time's done, I'm going to go write something. But I think the thing that I feel maybe I've struggled with, and I'm sure I wouldn't be the only one, is where through lack of creativity sometimes, and you can very much create that scenario for yourself. People, obviously, music and the creation of music is so inherently tied, for people that really want to pursue it, is so inherently tied to their, or can be so inherently tied to their sense of value and like self-worth. So I think when you don't create something, and when you don't create something you like, it can really hit home as like, I think because it can be so tied to how you feel about your own place in the world. I can see why people might struggle with that. Like, because I feel like I've certainly been there. I wouldn't say anywhere near to the degree I'm sure some people have. But what I found, I was talking to Keith Merrow a couple sort of episodes ago, and I was saying to him about how what I found is like the last the last month or so, I've been trying to, like I said, consciously work on a few things in my life, like little things to make them better. And I found it, I've been literally measuring it. I've been measuring how I feel each day. It sounds quite like scientific, but I feel like it helps me. And I've noticed in the space of about 3 or 4 weeks, all of the things like mood, sort of relationships, everything in my life seems to have just stepped up a bit. And that's only after, like you said about the 3 weeks thing, and that's what prompted me to think it, is that in the space of about 3 weeks, I feel like I'm in a much better place than I was. I think it's so sad how so many people could literally be 3 weeks away from being in a place that they absolutely are so happy with, but maybe don't find that inspiration to, well, not inspiration, I don't know if that's the word, find that prompt that just, whether that's inside them or something else, to get them into that place 3 weeks later, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So the thing is, every musician that you listen to feels like a piece of shit. So if you talk to enough musicians and know enough great artists, you realize that their self-worth is always, always in question. And if it were true that productivity and success equaled feeling good about yourself, then nobody famous and successful would ever kill themselves. But fact is they do, because the two things aren't linked. And so the lesson there for me is, well, they did the work anyways, so I shouldn't let the way I feel about myself prevent me from doing the work. The way I feel about myself is something else that I should probably talk to a therapist about. But you shouldn't let it stop you from working, because it doesn't let all those great musicians you listen to, doesn't make them stop working, basically. They're putting stuff out regardless of feeling like that. And I guarantee you they all feel like that at certain points. It's just part of the artistic temperament, is this perpetual state of torture. So you need to just kind of learn how to do the work regardless of that.
Yeah, it's such a tricky thing, especially when you're trying to encourage someone else. It feels like the sort of carrot and stick, and it often feels like you're using more stick than carrot,
Well, I mean,
but it's hard to.
There shouldn't be, because it's not up to you to get somebody else to do this stuff. You can't create somebody else's desire to do something like this. It has to come from within. And I definitely think that if someone is not going for it, there's a reason. Maybe they just don't want it. Not enough. Maybe they're just not obsessed by it, and that's fine. But if you look at the people who are at the top of their game with really with anything, but music, production, sports, or whatever, there's an obsession there, and you can't make somebody else be obsessed. And also, those people don't try to be obsessed. It's a wiring thing. That's not to say that you need to be psychotic in order to be good, but kind of need to be wired like that to some degree to be great. Because something needs to keep you coming back day after day after day, regardless of how you're feeling. I
think, is it Tiger Woods that often was the one who was sort of referred to it, but where he, I think, had a very difficult, essentially, not even necessarily through his own choice, sacrificed a lot of his, I think, really happiness, to be honest, to be a successful golfer. I don't really know much about his story, but I'm aware that there's a lot of maybe sacrifice that people don't see to achieve that so-called greatness, yeah, it's a tricky. I mean, thank you for I've enjoyed your kind of insight on all that stuff, because it's sometimes I think people need to hear it in simple terms. Not that I'm not saying you've just been talking in simple terms. That sounds a bit insulting. You know what I'm saying? Putting it in plain terms, in terms of sometimes the way to do the thing is to do the thing.
That's the only way to do it, is to do it.
Yeah. That should be the tagline for this podcast.
Seriously, people will get, I've had people get mad at me for answering them like that, because they want it to be more like that YouTube video you were talking about, where there's some complex system, and if you just tap into this system, then it's all going to just work out. And it would be so nice if that were true, because you could just pay money for that system even have someone make the system for you, or you could set the system up in Google Sheets or something, and things would just work. It would be so nice to think that it's that easy to just have shit work out and then feel good about yourself and be great at everything you try. If you just had that thing, you just knew how to do that thing, had that system. But unfortunately, it's not that easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. It's as simple as doing the work. The work is hard and brutal. So people would like to think of anything but doing the work, or they like to come up with things to simulate doing the work. And they consider it, like, I guess, tough love if you tell them to just shut up and do the work. But I don't know. It's not really tough love. It's just a reality.
Mm. Well, I think that's a good place. So before I steal more of your valuable morning time, because I've now learned how valuable, I feel honoured that's because this is my evening time. So I don't know if you find that insulting now, but
No?
time differences there. Yeah. So if you've got a question for the next guest, something to start our conversation, that would be great.
Sure. To the next guest, do you rely more on motivation or habit?
That's a good one. Yeah, I know my answers to that. Certainly trying to work on the habit side. But yeah, no, that's a great question. And an artist you think deserves some love would be great as well.
Two.
Two.
And I'm not big on shred guitar. So the reason I'm suggesting these two dudes is not because of any like shreddy reasons. However, they are basically Olympic athletes. It's because I actually think that I think they're phenomenal. I think they're like the next evolution of what's possible, and you're going to be hearing a lot about them in the next few years. And you just look them up on Instagram. One is a guitar player named Rafael Trujillo, and the other is a guitar player named Spiro Ducias. And just look them up. It's frightening stuff. And I'm not suggesting them, again, like I said, it's not because of their technical skill. That shit bores me. It's because I see evolution of what's possible with music in their playing. I've
seen Spiro's stuff. I think I've shared it once or twice, actually. It's
fucking insane.
Pretty scary, yeah. In a good way. Yeah. And I know you've got some some exciting news, I believe. If you want to share with the world, because I believe I know this will be going out after said announcement. If you want to share that, you're welcome to.
Well, yeah. So my band Daath, you may have heard of us, maybe not. We were previously active in the late 2000s on Roadrunner and Century Media, and then we recently reformed. We're now signed to Metal Blade, and our first single in 11 years is out now. It's called No Rest, No End. And actually, Spiro and Rafael are playing guest solos on it. We have a new lineup. I think it's the sickest music of our career, and check it out.
That's amazing, man. I'm excited to hear those features as well. That's really cool. That's yeah. Well, thank you so much for chatting, man. I've had a great time.
Thank you very much for your time.